If you have a component anvil, but you have no reason to pop it because you're losing or it doesn't turn into a full item, then wait right before carousel and rip it right before you go into carousel. This way you'll still be able to choose whichever component you want, but you'll be able to see which component you're able to get from carousel first. This enables you to have a little bit more context and figure out what item you're going to be getting. With Champion Conference, you'll get a champion that matches the trait that you have most active, starting with a 2 cost all the way up to 5 cost. However, did you know that it actually bugs out when you have a little bit of a weird interaction with emblems? For example, if you're playing vertical bruisers and you're up to the 5 cost, there is no 5 cost bruiser, so you can't actually get one. However, if you put a bruiser spell on someone, say for example a set, then you can actually get a set out of the portal. This might be unintentional, so just keep that in mind in case they do bug fix it. For example, if you're playing 3 bruiser and 3 story weaver, technically it makes sense that you should get an Aurelia. However, it might be a little bit buggy and give you a 50% chance of getting a set, so just keep that in mind that if you're not sure exactly what you're going to be getting, make sure to just bench any of the units that have spats on them, as this can make the rules a little bit confusing. Because they introduced golden removers, TGs are now predetermined. That means if you slam a Thieves' Glove at the start of a round, the items will be rolled and they are now stuck there for the rest of the round. This means that if you get carry items on your frontliner and you have access to a remover, you can simply remove the TG and move it onto a unit that better suits those items. Different TGs have a different set of predetermined items. This means that if you have access to a golden remover plus a TG, you have a very good synergy because you can always determine which unit best suits the items that you roll every single round and just keep moving that TG around. If you get an Ornn anvil later into the game, usually you want to wait until after Wolves to pop it. This is because you won't get access to some of the econ generating items. Now, whilst they can be good in a certain spot, most of the power in these items comes from building up your economy, and heading into stage 4, it's usually better that you get access to some of the other Ornn options. For the Janna Encounter, where she gives you 2 Zephyrs for 3 rounds, it's very important that you have more than 2 units as your frontline. This is because if anyone decides to double Zephyr the frontline, their melee carries will get instant access to your backline and you'll most definitely lose the fight. So this means even if you have to sacrifice one of your ranged units as a frontline Zephyr bait, it's usually worth it if multiple people are putting their Zephyrs around the front line. In set 10, we could easily pop off all of our headliners items using Superfan. In set 11, it's a little bit harder. You can technically do it with Inkshadow, but you can actually do it for any unit. It doesn't have to be a headliner. So say for example, you have 3 items here on your Kai'Sa. Then when you find the Kai'Sa 2, what you want to do is bench the Kai'Sa with all the standard items. So in this example, GS, IE, and Rageblade, and then put as many Inkshadow items as you can on your other Kai'Sa. Then when you upgrade the 2, it'll prioritize the Inkshadow items. And in this case, if you only have access to 2 Inkshadow items, then one of those 3 items will randomly get selected and put onto your Kai'Sa. So this means that you would have effectively popped off 2 of the items, and then you can decide to reshuffle your items as you see fit. If you only have access to 3 Inkshadow, then it's going to pop off only 1 of them, and if you have access to 7 Inkshadow, you can actually pop off all of them. And because you can easily just bench your unit and move the Inkshadow items around freely, this enables you to get a similar effect to popping off items with Superfan. It's a lot harder, not as easy. However, if it's there and you need it, then great, it works. Providing corner bait for your units is a pretty good habit to get into this set. Usually in the early game, you're just watching out for Caitlyn's. However, sometimes they play around Lux carry, and even in the late game, if they have access to a random Lux, the CC is not insignificant. And of course, if they have a Lux 3, then obviously watch out for leaving your units in the corner. When playing early game Lost Streak, you want to make sure that you're actively scouting and positioning on the same side as their weakest unit. Furthermore, if you can play around units such as Kha'Zix or Conqueror, they're really good at finishing off some of the squishy units. So you can see in this example, if we position away from the Yasuo, we can actually sometimes snipe a kill onto this Darius here, which will save you a little bit of HP. On average, if you're actively positioning in stage 2, you save anywhere from 5 to 10 HP, which is usually the difference between one placement. One way you can cheese some late game fights is utilizing either Edge of Night or Udyr's drop aggro passive. If you clump your units on the left side of the board here and you're versing someone who's diagonally opposite, then usually what happens is when the de-aggro occurs, the Xayah on the top right corner will walk forward, and then sometimes you can cheese a kill. Obviously you can just repeat the same by clumping on the right side if your enemy is positioned in the top left. If you get March of Progress, you want to try and play Exalted for ideally 2 rounds. This is because if you play it for 1 round, you get to level 7 faster on 3-6, allowing you to all in an entire round earlier, saving you a lot of HP. If you play it for 2 rounds, however, you get to level 8 an entire round early, and this will enable you to cap out your board a lot sooner. Don't worry too much about getting to level 9 faster because it requires 8 additional experience, so unless Exalted fits your board, then just play around the 2 experience.